The entire ballroom fell silent. Every conversation stopped mid-sentence. Crystal champagne glasses froze halfway to lips. The string quartet's music faded into shocked silence. Because standing at the top of the grand marble staircase, backlit by chandeliers that cast her in an almost divine glow, was someone they thought they'd never see again. Someone they'd spent years destroying. Someone they'd laughed at, humiliated, and driven away. Princess Amara had returned. But she wasn't the broken girl they remembered. She was something else entirely. Something that made their hearts stop and their blood run cold. If you want to see how a woman they called the ugliest princess in Africa became the most powerful force in the kingdom, don't you dare click away from this video. Hit that like button right now because what you're about to witness is the most satisfying transformation story you'll ever hear. Drop a comment with a fire emoji if you believe in glow-ups and revenge served cold. Let's go back to where it all started. In the wealthy kingdom of Ashanti, located in modern-day Ghana, the royal family lived in a palace that mixed ancient African tradition with contemporary luxury. King Kwame ruled with his elegant wife Queen Ama, and they had 3 daughters. The eldest was Princess Naomi, 28 years old, breathtakingly beautiful with perfect skin, long natural hair, and a figure that made designers beg to dress her. The middle daughter was Princess Zara, 25, equally stunning with high cheekbones, full lips, and eyes that could stop traffic. Both were Instagram famous with millions of followers, constantly featured in magazines as Africa's most beautiful royals. Then there was Princess Amara, 22 years old and different in every possible way. Where her sisters were tall and statuesque, Amara was short and stocky. Where they had flawless skin, Amara struggled with severe acne that left her face marked with scars despite expensive treatments. Where they had long flowing hair, Amara's hair was thin and broke easily no matter what product she tried. She was overweight, had crooked teeth, thick glasses that magnified her eyes awkwardly, and walked with a slight limp from a childhood accident that never healed properly. In a family of swans, Amara was the ugly duckling, and nobody let her forget it. Her own sisters were the worst. At royal dinners where important guests and dignitaries attended, Naomi would make comments loud enough for others to hear. "Amara, maybe you should skip dessert tonight. You're representing the kingdom, after all." Zara would laugh and add. "Or maybe she should skip the whole dinner and save us all the embarrassment of watching her eat." The guests would pretend not to hear, but their uncomfortable smiles and averted eyes told Amara they agreed. At royal photo shoots for official portraits and magazine features, the photographer would position Amara in the back or to the side, sometimes suggesting she step out of certain shots entirely. "The lighting works better with just the 2 older princesses," they'd say diplomatically. Social media was brutal. Photos of the 3 princesses together would flood with comments. "2 queens and a troll. Why does the royal family keep the ugly one around? Princess Amara is proof that beauty skips a generation." Memes comparing her to her gorgeous sisters went viral regularly. The palace staff whispered when they thought she couldn't hear. "Such a shame. The king and queen are so beautiful, and the older princesses are stunning. What happened with this one?" Foreign dignitaries who came to discuss potential marriage alliances would meet all 3 princesses, show interest in Naomi and Zara, then visibly recoil when introduced to Amara. One prince from a neighboring kingdom had actually laughed in her face before catching himself and apologizing insincerely. But the cruelest treatment came from within her own family. Her mother, Queen Alma, loved her, but even that love came with conditions and disappointment. "Amara, darling, I've booked you another appointment with the dermatologist and the nutritionist, and perhaps we should try a different hairstylist. We have to do something about your appearance." Her father, King Kwame, barely acknowledged her existence, focusing all his pride and attention on his beautiful older daughters who brought honor to the kingdom through their looks and social media influence. Her sisters treated her like a servant rather than a sibling. "Amara, go fetch my phone from my room. Amara, I need you to pick up my dry cleaning. Amara, cancel your plans and help me choose an outfit for tonight's gala." When Amara tried to refuse, they'd use emotional manipulation. "If you really loved us as your sisters, you'd help. But I guess you're too selfish." The worst part was that Amara had a brilliant mind that nobody valued. While her sisters obsessed over fashion and social media followers, Amara had graduated top of her class with degrees in economics and international development. She spoke 6 languages fluently. She had innovative ideas about modernizing the kingdom's infrastructure and economy. But when she tried to contribute during royal council meetings, her father would cut her off. "Amara, these matters require a certain level of sophistication and understanding that you haven't quite reached yet. Let the adults handle this." When she wrote detailed policy proposals for improving education and healthcare, they were dismissed without being read. Very nice, dear. Now why don't you go work on your appearance instead? That's more important for a princess. The breaking point came at Princess Naomi's elaborate 30th birthday celebration. It was the social event of the year, attended by celebrities, politicians, and royalty from across Africa and beyond. Amara had spent weeks preparing, working with stylists to find a dress that would flatter her figure, practicing makeup techniques to cover her acne scars, getting her hair done by the best salon in the capital. For once, she felt almost pretty, almost confident. She walked into the ballroom hoping this might be the night people saw her differently. Instead, it became her worst nightmare. Naomi took one look at Amara, and her face twisted with disgust. In front of hundreds of guests, she said loudly, "Amara, what are you wearing? You look like you're trying to stuff a sausage into casing that's 3 sizes too small. This is MY night, and you're embarrassing our family." The entire ballroom heard. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Zara joined in. "Honestly, Amara, we asked you to make an effort, not to make a fool of yourself. Maybe you should just go back to your room." Amara stood frozen, feeling hundreds of eyes on her, hearing the whispers and snickers. Tears streamed down her face, ruining the makeup she'd spent hours applying. She looked to her parents for support, but her father looked away in embarrassment, and her mother gave her a look that said, "Not now, we'll talk later." Something inside Amara shattered that night. Not just her heart, but her spirit, her connection to this family, her willingness to keep enduring this treatment. She walked out of that ballroom, out of the palace, and disappeared into the night. She took nothing but her passport, her degrees, and the small inheritance from her grandmother, who had been the only person who ever truly loved her unconditionally. The royal family barely noticed she was gone. Naomi said, "Good riddance. The palace is more beautiful without her uglying up the place." Her parents made a brief public statement that Princess Amara had decided to pursue education abroad and would be taking a leave from royal duties. Nobody questioned it. Nobody cared. For the next 5 years, Princess Amara vanished completely. No social media posts. No public appearances. No contact with her family except for one brief letter to her mother saying she was alive and safe, but needed time away. The royal family moved on easily without her. Naomi married a wealthy businessman in a wedding that broke the internet. Zara became a fashion icon, launching her own designer line. The kingdom prospered under King Kwame's rule. Nobody missed the ugly princess who had always been an embarrassment. But they had no idea what Amara was doing during those 5 years. They had no idea about the transformation taking place. They had no idea that the woman they destroyed was being reborn into something they could never have imagined. And they definitely had no idea that she was coming back. Wait until you hear what Princess Amara did during those 5 years away. If you're hooked on this story, prove it by hitting that subscribe button and turning on notifications so you don't miss part 2 of this incredible journey. Comment YSSS Amara if you're rooting for her comeback. Let me tell you what happened next. During her first year away, Amara lived in a small apartment in New York City under a false name. She cried every day for the first 3 months, replaying every cruel word, every mocking laugh, every moment of humiliation. She hit rock bottom, considering whether life was even worth living when you were fundamentally unlovable and worthless. But then she remembered her grandmother's last words before she died. "Amara, my beautiful girl, the world will try to define you by your exterior, but your value comes from within. Never forget that you are brilliant, capable, and destined for greatness that has nothing to do with conventional beauty." Those words became Amara's lifeline. She decided that if the world judged her solely on appearance, she would transform her appearance not to please them, but to remove that barrier so they'd have no choice but to see her true value. She threw herself into the most intense transformation journey imaginable. She hired the best personal trainer in New York, a former Olympic coach who worked with her 6 days a week. The workouts were brutal, pushing her body beyond limits she thought possible. But Amara discovered something powerful. She was strong. Underneath the weight she'd carried her whole life was muscle, endurance, and athletic ability nobody had ever known existed. She worked with a nutritionist who helped her understand that her weight wasn't about willpower or laziness as her family had always implied. She had undiagnosed hormonal imbalances and food sensitivities that, once treated properly, allowed her body to finally respond to healthy eating. The weight melted away, revealing bone structure and features that had been hidden. She underwent careful, subtle cosmetic procedures, not to become someone else, but to correct the things that had caused her genuine distress. The acne scars were treated with laser therapy. Her teeth were straightened, Her limp was corrected through physical therapy and a minor surgery she'd been denied as a child because her parents thought it was unnecessary. But the physical transformation was only part of the journey. Amara enrolled in Columbia University's School of International and Public Affairs, earning a master's degree in economic policy and development. She interned at the United Nations, working on initiatives to improve conditions in developing nations. She published research papers that were cited by major economists and policymakers. She built a reputation in international development circles as one of the brightest young minds in the field. She also invested her grandmother's inheritance wisely, working with financial advisors to grow her wealth independently of her royal family. She started a foundation that funded education for underprivileged girls across Africa, operating anonymously so her family wouldn't know. By year 3, when Amara looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The weight was gone, revealing a face with striking bone structure that had always been there but hidden. Her skin glowed with health. Her hair, given proper care and extensions, flowed past her shoulders in gorgeous natural curls. Her body was toned and strong from years of dedicated training. But more importantly, the way she carried herself had transformed. She walked with confidence, spoke with authority, commanded attention when she entered a room not because of her title, but because of her presence and intelligence. By year 5, Amara had become everything she'd always had the potential to be. She'd given a TED Talk on economic development that went viral, though she gave it under her middle name so her family wouldn't recognize her. She'd been offered positions at major international organizations. She'd been featured in Forbes' 30 Under 30 list under a pseudonym for her foundation's work. She had transformed not just physically but mentally, emotionally, and professionally into a powerhouse. And then she received the invitation that changed everything. Her father, King Kwame, was celebrating 40 years on the throne with a massive jubilee celebration. As a member of the royal family, even an estranged one, Amara received an official invitation. Her first instinct was to ignore it. Why return to the place and people who had caused her so much pain? But then a different thought emerged. What if she went back not as the broken, ugly princess they'd driven away, but as the powerful, successful woman she'd become? What if she showed them exactly what they'd lost when they chose to see her as worthless? What if she proved that their cruel judgment had been wrong all along? The idea took root and grew. Amara decided she would attend the Jubilee, but she would do it on her own terms, in her own way, and with her own agenda that had nothing to do with seeking their approval. She spent 6 months preparing. She hired the best stylist in Paris to create a custom gown that would make her unforgettable. She worked with a media consultant to craft her public image. She prepared mentally for the onslaught of attention and potential cruelty. And then, on the night of the Jubilee, 5 years after she'd fled in humiliation, Princess Amara returned. The grand ballroom of the palace was packed with over 1,000 guests, dignitaries, celebrities, politicians, royalty from around the world. Naomi and Zara, now in their 30s and still beautiful but starting to show the first signs of age, held court surrounded by admirers. King Kwame and Queen Amma sat on their thrones, basking in the celebration of their reign. Nobody expected Amara. Nobody had even thought about her. When the royal announcer's voice boomed across the ballroom, Her Royal Highness, Princess Amara of Ashanti. People looked around confused. Who? The ugly one. The one who ran away years ago? Why would she show her face here again? And then she appeared at the top of the grand staircase. The vision that greeted them made the entire ballroom fall into stunned silence. Princess Amara descended the stairs like a goddess. Her custom gown was a masterpiece of African design, rich Kent cloth patterns reimagined in haute couture, colors of gold, royal blue, and emerald that made her dark skin glow. The dress hugged a figure that was absolutely perfect, showing curves in all the right places, toned arms, and a silhouette that made every woman in the room feel a flash of envy. But it was her face that truly stopped hearts. The acne scars were gone. The crooked teeth were now a dazzling perfect smile. The thick glasses were gone, revealing eyes lined with dramatic makeup that made them smolder with intelligence and power. Her hair cascaded in thick, lustrous curls down her back, adorned with delicate gold accessories. She wore her grandmother's diamonds, which sparkled under the chandeliers. She walked without a limp, each step confident and measured, commanding attention without saying a word. As she descended the stairs, every eye in the ballroom followed her movement. Men's mouths literally hung open. Women whispered furiously to each other. Is that really Princess Amara? It can't be. The ugly one. She's absolutely stunning. What happened to her? Princess Naomi's face went pale, then red with fury. Princess Zara looked like she'd been slapped. Queen Amma gasped and clutched her chest. King Kwame stood from his throne, eyes wide with shock. This couldn't be their ugly duckling daughter. This couldn't be the girl they'd been ashamed of. This woman looked like she belonged on the cover of Vogue, like she could command armies, like she was the most powerful person in the room. And the most infuriating part? She was. Amara reached the bottom of the stairs and curtsied perfectly to her parents, her movements graceful and controlled. "Your Majesties," she said, her voice clear and confident. "Thank you for the invitation. It's been far too long." The king couldn't form words. The queen started crying. Naomi stormed over, her face twisted with an emotion that was part shock, part rage, part something that looked like fear. "What have you done?" she hissed. "This is some kind of trick. Surgery. Artificial. You're still the same pathetic." Amara cut her off with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hello, sister. You look exactly the same as 5 years ago. How comforting that some things never change." The subtle insult landed perfectly. Naomi was still beautiful, yes, but she hadn't evolved, hadn't grown, hadn't become anything more than she'd been. Amara, by contrast, was unrecognizable in the best possible way. Zara joined her sister, trying to regain control of the situation. "Amara, this is quite the entrance. Trying to steal attention on Father's special night? How typical of you to be selfish." Amara laughed, a sound like music. "Steal attention? Dear sister, I simply walked into a room. If that's enough to steal attention from everyone here, what does that say?" The people nearby who heard the exchange struggled not to laugh. Social media exploded within minutes. Photos and videos of Princess Amara's entrance were already going viral. Princess Amara's incredible transformation. The glow-up of the century. From mocked princess to absolute queen. The hashtag Princess Amara Returns started trending worldwide within an hour. But the night was just beginning, and Amara had far more planned than just showing up looking beautiful. During dinner, she was seated at the high table near her family. Foreign dignitaries who had previously ignored or mocked her now competed for her attention. The prince who had laughed in her face 5 years ago tried to approach her, but Amara looked through him as if he didn't exist. When the king gave his speech thanking everyone for attending his jubilee, he made brief mention of his family, including "my daughter Princess Amara, who has returned to us after pursuing her studies abroad." The phrasing made it sound like she'd just been at university, completely glossing over why she'd really left. When the floor opened for toasts and tributes, Amara stood. The room fell silent again, everyone eager to hear what she would say. She raised her glass, her voice carrying across the ballroom. "Your Majesties, honored guests, I want to thank my father for 40 years of devoted service to our kingdom, and I want to thank my family for teaching me the most valuable lesson of my life." She paused, letting tension build. "They taught me that people will judge you based on your exterior. They taught me that cruelty can come from those closest to you. They taught me that sometimes you have to lose everything to discover who you really are." The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. 5 years ago, I left this palace broken and humiliated. Tonight, I return as the founder of a foundation that has educated over 10,000 girls across Africa. As a published researcher whose work on economic development is cited by the World Bank. As a consultant to the United Nations on poverty reduction strategies. And yes, as someone who learned that transformation is possible when you refuse to accept other people's definitions of your worth. She smiled at her sisters, who looked absolutely murderous. "So here's to my family, who pushed me to become someone they could never be. A person of substance, character, and genuine accomplishment. Thank you." She sat down to thunderous applause. The king looked uncomfortable. The queen was crying again. Naomi and Zara looked ready to murder her. But the damage was done. In one speech, Amara had reclaimed her narrative, exposed her family's treatment of her, and positioned herself as the moral superior. Social media went into overdrive. Think pieces were being written in real time. Princess Amara's powerful revenge. The ugly duckling becomes the queen. How Princess Amara's family drove her away and regrets it now. The story became global news within hours. But the night wasn't over. At midnight, right when the celebration reached its peak, the royal announcer called for silence again. "Her Majesty, Queen Amma, wishes to make an announcement." The queen stood, clearly emotional, and dropped a bombshell that nobody saw coming. Not even Amara. "My dear subjects and honored guests, tonight has been full of surprises. None more wonderful than the return of my daughter Amara. I have been a fool. We have all been fools. Years ago, we failed to see the true treasure in our midst. We judged by appearances and missed the extraordinary person standing right before us. Tonight, I wish to correct that grave error." She turned to face Amara directly. Amara, my brilliant, beautiful, remarkable daughter. Your father and I have made a decision. We are designating you as the crown princess, heir to the throne of Ashanti. The ballroom erupted in gasps and shocked murmurs. Naomi screamed, "What?" Zara looked like she might faint. This was unprecedented. Naomi, as the eldest, had always been the assumed heir. For the king and queen to skip over both older daughters and name Amara as crown princess was shocking, radical, and absolutely devastating to Naomi and Zara. The queen continued, "The kingdom needs a leader with vision, intelligence, compassion, and strength. We have watched Naomi and Zara squander their privileges on vanity and superficiality. Meanwhile, Amara has proven herself in the world beyond these palace walls. She is the future this kingdom deserves." King Kwame stood and added, "I have been a poor father to you, Amara. I valued the wrong things and punished you for not conforming to shallow standards. I hope you can forgive us and accept this responsibility." Amara stood slowly, every eye in the ballroom fixed on her. This was the moment, the ultimate validation, the complete reversal of everything she'd endured. Her cruel sisters who had mocked and belittled her were now watching their futures evaporate while hers ascended. But as Amara looked at her parents' hopeful faces, at the crowd waiting for her acceptance, at her sisters' devastated expressions, she realized something profound. She didn't need this anymore. The revenge she'd imagined, the validation she'd craved, it all felt hollow now. Because she'd already won. Not by becoming crown princess, but by becoming herself. The true transformation hadn't been physical. It had been realizing that she didn't need their approval, their acceptance, or their throne to have value. She was already complete, already worthy, already powerful. So Amara did something nobody expected. She smiled gently at her parents and said, "Thank you for this incredible honor, but I must respectfully decline." The ballroom gasped again. Decline? Who declines being crown princess? Amara continued, "I love our kingdom. I will always be committed to its prosperity and the well-being of our people. But I've built a life doing work that matters on a global scale. I've found my purpose, and it's bigger than a throne or a crown. What I want from this family isn't a title. It's genuine love, respect, and amends for years of cruelty." She looked at her sisters. "Naomi, Zara, you spent our entire childhood making me feel worthless. You used your beauty as a weapon to destroy someone who only ever wanted to be loved by her sisters. I forgive you, but I will never forget. You can have your titles and your social media fame. I have something more valuable, self-worth that doesn't depend on external validation." She turned back to her parents. "Mother, father, I appreciate this gesture, but a crown doesn't erase the pain of a childhood spent believing I was unlovable because I didn't look like my sisters. If you truly want to make amends, use your platform to speak out against the cruelty we inflict on people based on their appearance. Teach this kingdom that value comes from character, not beauty." The speech left everyone stunned. By declining the crown, Amara had made the most powerful statement possible. She didn't need what they were offering because she had already claimed something greater, her own identity, her own worth, her own path. The ultimate revenge wasn't taking the throne from her sisters. It was showing that the throne meant nothing compared to the life she'd built for herself. As the night ended and guests departed, the story of Princess Amara's return and stunning rejection of the crown spread across the globe. She became a symbol of self-empowerment, transformation, and the courage to define your own worth. Her foundation received millions in new donations. Her work gained international recognition. She was invited to speak at forums and conferences around the world, and she did it all on her own terms, never again allowing anyone to make her feel less than she was. Her sisters eventually had to confront the shallowness of their own lives. Naomi's marriage fell apart when her husband left her for someone younger. Zara's fashion line failed because it lacked substance and vision. They both slowly realized that beauty fades, social media fame is fleeting, but the kind of substantive accomplishment Amara had achieved lasts forever. They never truly reconciled, but they learned a brutal lesson about the consequences of cruelty. As for Amara, she found love eventually with a man who valued her mind first and her beauty second. She continued her work, transforming lives across Africa. And she lived happily, not because she got revenge on her family, but because she discovered something more powerful. The unshakable knowledge that she was enough, exactly as she was, and nobody could ever take that away again. So there you have it, the story of how they mocked the princess for years, and she came back looking like that. Not just physically transformed, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually evolved into someone they could never diminish again. If this story inspired you, moved you, or made you believe in the power of transformation and self-worth, do me a favor. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that they are enough, that cruel people don't define your value, and that the best revenge is becoming everything they said you couldn't be. Drop a comment telling me what part of Amara's journey resonated with you most. And subscribe to this channel because we're bringing you more powerful stories that will change how you see yourself and the world. Remember this: the people who mock you today will beg for your attention tomorrow when you become who you were always meant to be. Never let anyone's cruelty define your worth. Your value comes from within, and transformation is always possible when you believe in yourself. This is African Folktales, and this is just the beginning of your own transformation story. See you in the next one.